sorry, it's the end of the day and you get the PR person. So, so I'll run through this quite quickly. Right, so just a little bit about why you should do PR. People think we just go out for lunches and drink champagne, which is mostly true. But when we're not doing that, we do actually have a role in life. So I explained to my father. So why should you do it? Nobody has one of these. If I had one, then I'd use my crystal ball to find the winning lottery numbers, and I wouldn't be here. So you have to tell people what you're doing. I think the biggest reason that we always get appointed as a PR agency is because a company has seen what their competition's doing, and that's usually one of the main reasons. They've realised that people don't have crystal balls, and they actually need to tell people what it is they're doing. It can help to impress your clients. That's one of the biggest things that we do, is that clients really like it because we're giving them free PR. The press like it if you make relationships with them, especially at BVE, because you've got a chance to see them face to face. One of the things that I would say is that if people hear Exhibitor at NAB and IBC, the press are so busy that at BVE you get a really good opportunity to actually see them face to face. Apart from making that relationship with them and explaining who you are, you'll never know when you might need them. And so if you did have a bad story that was going to get out and you've been nice to them in the past, then that really helps that relationship. They're all a really friendly bunch. Most of them don't bite. And most of them have been in the industry forever. And the one top tip I'll give you is, if there are any new journalists come in, when they get in, grab them, teach them everything they need to know, and they'll love you forever. So this is a compare and contrast, just to explain a bit about the broadcast industry. And I'll explain why this is. So Condé Nast Traveller has all these people working for them. Television has full-time editorial. Broadcast just has George. Obviously, there are a wider team than that. But he just looks after all the technology and facilities, and he looks after broadcast tech. He is an extremely busy person. What that means is that the more information that you can give him, the easier it is, rather than him having to dig stuff out. So George will be your best friend if you give him lots of information. I'm just going to do a little bit about basics of PR. This is all you need, really. The last one being the most important. There is a bribery act. PR agencies have a real problem with it. But it's amazing how you can build up relationships with people in this industry. But they want to know people, and they want to know technical people. They want to know what's going on in the industry. And it's always really important to ask them their opinion. So if you're launching a new product, then always say, well, what do you think? You're, the eyes and the ears of the industry. What do you think? And that really builds up the relationship with them, because they are seeing everything that's going on. Where press relationships fall down is where people just tend to talk to that and say, right, I'm launching this, and da-da, and when you write about me, which is like the worst thing you can ever say to a journalist, because then they immediately don't. And never say no comment to one either, because then they immediately will. So you don't really need a lot to do PR. But it's important to think about what magazines. Obviously, for the show, we talk to all the industry titles, online, offline. We work with a lot of the association magazines. The best thing you can do is ask what your clients are reading. They might all say, well, actually, we just read one certain magazine and you hadn't even thought about it. And ask what they're reading personally as well. This year we are going to be working with a big PR agency that does national coverage. So it's pretty obvious that the industry probably does read the Evening Standard, and they probably read Metro. So we are going to be looking at that, and then also for BV North, working with the Manchester local press as well. And then if you're in a facility or a broadcaster, see what magazines they've got lying around, because you might see something that you won't previously have seen. Don't forget, all the associations have magazines or newsletters. They're really important to get into, because they actually really just go to the core buyers. And a lot of the industry manufacturers and resellers also do magazines. Sony do the producer, I do the final one. There's an Avid one, the CVP do the Iris, JVC do one, I think, called the Highway, I think. So they're all doing them, and they all need content. So speak to your partners at those titles as well. And then obviously there's all the online versions of all the magazines. In the UK, we've been really slow at producing any blogs. There was a few blogs a couple of years ago. They seem to have died away, but they are becoming more and more popular. And the Den Lennys and Phil Blooms and all those people in the world all have their own blogs, which are really important. And people are going to them more and more often. So the way that you can find them is you can use there's a tool on Google where you can find blogs about the industry. But don't be scared of going to one of the American ones as well, because they're always looking for content. So it's just about providing your news to different people. One of the questions that we get asked a lot from exhibitors at BV that don't have a marketing department is actually how to write a press release, which is like the most sort of one of the most basic things in a way to get your news out. These are all the things that you should include. It always shocks me on manufacturers' websites that they will have a news section, they have a press release, and they forget to put anybody's contact details on. So you go to the contact page and there's just a contact for the head office and the salesperson, which really isn't much use for a journalist who wants to actually write on your story or wants to get an image. So always make sure your contact details are on there. All you need to say is a headline. Don't think you have to come up with something really catchy, because the journalists actually like to do that bit themselves. Talk about what it is you're announcing, put a quote in, have the end. Does anyone know why it's called a boilerplate? No? It's from trains. So on trains they have a boilerplate where you stamp your information about the train. And the PR world and the train world have obviously come together in some way, strange way, like the pottery pigs. I've put research the web. That's clue for plagiarise other people's press releases. It's the if you go onto a major manufacturer's website or come post house, they have press releases on there. Look at what they've written, how they've written it, and it should be quite easy from there. Approvals, yes, do get them. You can either work on a seek forgiveness or seek permission route. Either's up to you. Don't go down that route if you're working with the BBC of thinking you'll get away with it, because you probably won't. It is hard to get approvals through the BBC, as some of you here might know, and certain other broadcasters. They do have a list of guidelines, which I'm happy to give you, which is actually it's very short. You're not allowed to mention BBC in the headline. You're only allowed to mention their name 3 times, and you're not allowed to put a quote from them. If you send it to them directly as that, then you've got a lot more chance of it getting approved. Does anyone here who works at the BBC? No, I've given away all their secrets now. That's good. When you're sending out a press release, always blind CC it, because everyone just laughs at you if you send it out to everyone else. And only send Word documents. Please don't send PDFs. All the journalists will ask you for that. They just hate it. You can send images now, which we didn't used to have to do. More images the better, but don't clog up their email files. I think I spoke to George at IBC, and just for the show he was getting up to 300 press releases a day. So he's a bit busy looking through them, so don't clog up his emails too much. So what can we do for you at the show? So we're doing a series of previews, including getting information together for the preview. We send out press releases on what exhibitors are doing. We have a spreadsheet on all exhibitors. So anyone who's come back to us and said, yes, we're doing this, it goes into a spreadsheet, and that gets sent out to all the press just before the show. And we also provide some information to Will, who writes the blog. So this is all happening before the show. So this is all content. So people you know, the more, what I will say is the bigger manufacturers tend not to send us stuff, so the smaller guys have more of a chance. So if you do have a marketing department, send our emails onto them. If you don't, then tell us what you're doing. We're happy to walk through with you how to write a press release. We can talk to you who you should be send it to, and how you should find their lists, and I'll go on to a bit about lists in a bit. So I just put something about what makes it interesting. Competitions they like writing about, obviously new products, interesting stand design. That's a reminder that we are doing the Stand Design Awards, so don't forget that. You get a nice glass trophy, and we do PR on it and lots of tweeting, etc. Some of the most popular stands we've had have been when we've had Formula One cars, people doing stuff on the stands, celebrities coming along, just stuff that really is a bit different. CC us on any information you send to I2I, because then you don't have to send it twice, and they don't have to then send it to us, so it makes it a lot easier for everyone. So press lists. We used to just send out our entire press list to everyone, of people that have said they're going. More and more the press is saying no, data protection, and you can't just send out my email to anyone. What we do now is we send out 2 lists. So we contact all the press to see if they're attending, so we can send you that list, and then we can also send you another list where we've requested from them if we can send out their email address. So we're in that process currently for BV North. Those lists will be ready probably the middle of next week. Some of them will have email addresses on, some of them won't because they won't allow us. If they're not, then if you Google them, you can probably find them, or follow them through other devices. Don't add these people to your sales list. They don't want to see your latest flyer or your sale. They want to get a press release. They like to be treated as something a bit special. So don't just add them to anything else that you're sending once you get my list that I'm sharing with you. And contact them to meet up. You know, this is where you can get the opportunity to see them at the show. And if they come back to you and say no, or they don't even come back to you, don't worry. It's just, you know, it might not be the right time for them. They might be too busy, but I can bet you from about 4 o'clock they'll be at the bar. So that's where they are usually hanging out. Traditionally, on the middle night of the show, Quantal do a big press dinner. So they're usually all at the show for that. And I think they're still attending on doing it this year. So nearer the show in London, we'll find out when that is. If you want to do any press events at the show, let us know, and we can tell you when it's a good or a bad time, because other people are obviously doing them, and at a small show like this you don't want to conflict. We can hold press meetings in our office. We've got a table that we can put a reserve sign on if you want to use that. And if you tell us your Twitter account, we'll spread the news through the Bubble and Squeak social media, as well as, you know, the team at I2I will be doing that as well. So what can we do for you on site? There's still an ongoing debate about whether the press like press kits. The resounding opinion currently is yes, they do still like paper. I think they find that when they walk into a press office and see tons of USB sticks, that's great, but they can't actually see what's on them. George said to me the other day that after IBC he was just going to give up journalism and open a data farm with the amount of USB sticks he's got. So if you are going to do a USB stick, put a large piece of paper with it that says actually what's on it, because if not, they just won't even bother. We usually say to do about 30 copies. You can increase that if you want, and we can always let you know if you need to go and get some more. The most popular press kits last year were from a company called Promotion, who did these beautiful orange books, very nice pen, and their press kit inside it. And they all went very, very quickly. So, and I wouldn't bother doing CDs if anyone thinks doing those, because they would rather have a USB or paper. We have a show news board where we write up stories of the day, which all the press will see when they come in. We tell the press what is going on. So if you've made any sales at the show, any partnership agreements, we've just seen something very amusing that you want to tell us, then we can put that up there and we can tell the press. And the e-daily is written from the press office. So Will hides under a table and writes that. But we give him the majority of the stories. That's our contacts. Dawn was here earlier, she just had to pop off. But that's our contacts, and if anyone's got any questions about PR. No? Excellent. Right, I'll go and drink champagne.